Truly, truly, I say to you, whoever believes and also does the works that I do, then even greater works than I shall you perform. So you don't have to choose between your spiritual path and religion. The two are not at odds. There are some people who are placing themselves between you and your spiritual path. You are not at odds with the original teachings of the scripture whatsoever. In fact, in Jesus' own words, be even greater than me. Except I like to change that with you already are. You just need the realization.
Welcome, beautiful beings, to season 2 of the Cosmic Love Antenna podcast with your host, Harrison Ma. This podcast sets the loving intention of creating the mystical space needed to pull back the layers restricting health, alignment, and love. Now let's walk you home to your cosmic spiritual heart space. Before we continue this beautiful chat today, wonderful souls, I need to jump in here to share something really exciting. If you've been following these episodes or you've been following me on social media, you know that I am in the process of releasing my first book, Your Cosmic Love Antenna, Define, Embody, and Emit Your Unique Frequency of Love. And at the time of this episode release, pre-orders are now open. If you have been pulled to this show, if you're looking to understand the what, the how, and the why of love, if you're looking to apply some of the tools connected to your chakras, inner child, releasing religious trauma, ancestral healing, emotional release, and so much more, then this beautiful expression from my heart to yours is for you. If you are looking to channel more of your unique gifts and the divine frequency that you are, these pages will open all of this up. And if you're interested, all you need to do is go to cosmicloveantenna.com. That's cosmicloveantenna.com. And you can pre-order this book right now. If you pre-order, click on that link, put in your email, you're going to get access to some special gifts that I'm only offering to those who get in before I release it fully. These gifts are going to be some more channeled meditations, activations, and some other surprises from my heart to yours. So head over to cosmicloveantenna.com, pre-order this beautiful expression, and I can't wait to hear how it shifts your life. If you're listening to this after pre-order sales, that same link can be also used to go to the direct purchase link. Sending love, and I hope you enjoyed the rest of this episode today. I have the pleasure of inviting back my beautiful friend, Andrei Knight, to have a discussion today about all things Tantra, but to really bring Tantra into the light, to apply it to a lot of the things we're seeing in the world in regards to the church, in regards to religion, and a lot of the separation energy. And how do we transcend that? We're going to get into all of these topics. We're going to talk about solutions. We're going to talk about, how we can step forward together as a collective, connecting back into ourselves, and everything in between. If you're new to Andrei's voice, right? Andrei is a powerful meditation and Tantra awakening coach. He's an energy healer. He is a priest. But most of all, he is a big, supercharged heart. Andrei, welcome back to the Cosmic Love Antenna.
Oh, thank you so much, Brother Harrison. And thank you for that beautiful, beautiful introduction. It's such a pleasure to be back with you. I know we did an episode already and we did a live last week together, and we both had the thought simultaneously, like there's more to unpack here. And I'm really excited to dive into it with you.
Yeah, I think that's one of my favorite parts. And I was talking about this with you just before we started recording. When we connect with another person, especially when that person is on a similar stage in their journey to what we are, both of our hearts light up, right? Our hearts light up and the energy moves through us, and we get like this confirmation from Source, God, whatever your name is for it, that, oh, let's keep dancing, because I know I get a lot from you, Andrei, but I think it's more that there's probably going to be other people getting a lot from our interaction. So let's go deeper, right? Let's keep going.
All right. Well, it sounds good. I mean, you mentioned both the issue and the solution kind of in one sentence. I think the biggest issue we're facing as a society whatever problem you zero in on, the overriding issue is disconnection. And you also mentioned the solution, which is connection. How you and I both just felt elated coming out of a room on Clubhouse about reparenting the inner child. When we're in our purpose, we light up. When we are just being our very beingness, even more so than anything you're doing in the external world, when you are being what you were meant to be, that in itself is the power. That is what empowers us.
And I think, we're going to talk about it today with some other maybe tantric perspectives and practices that I know you're really familiar with. But I think the first step here is having a willingness to open your heart to these kinds of conversations, these kinds of practices, these kinds of perspectives, right? Because I think, and we're going to talk about this today when it comes to the church and religion, but I think our own worst enemy when it comes to these kinds of reconnecting back to self is the belief systems that we fall into, right? The belief systems that are either programmed from a very young age, or we go into because we want that connection, right? We go into because we want a community, we want a tribe, we want a family. But then once we're in it, it's very hard to look out of it because that belief system is closed. So let me ask you a question, Andrei, with this. A question that bubbles up. I'm wondering, what are your thoughts? I know we spoke yesterday, your heart at the moment, your love at the moment, at the time of this recording, is going to everything happening in Iran. And I'm wondering, what are your thoughts on, specifically maybe some of the belief systems that are causing pain and the separation energy that's being sort of exacerbated by that whole situation?
Yeah, absolutely. I see both the pain, but I also see the beauty of what's happening. Okay, the pain, it's very easy to see. There's a very authoritarian, very suppressive regime that absolutely wants to take all rights away from women, even the right of feeling the wind in their hair, right? Because it's not just about the head covering, it's how you feel when you're covered up, And I also see the beauty because it is the women that are rising. We saw an Arab Spring a few years back, but what we saw is governments toppled and even more authoritarian governments put in their place. Nothing really changed on a big scale. And I know in our club, Tantric Awakening, we've been talking for a long time that there's going to be a second Arab Spring. You can feel it in the air when you visit some of those places. We felt it based on some of the Muslim women that came into our rooms and the comments they shared. So we always said there's going to be a second Arab Spring, and it's going to be led by the women. Now, if you're living somewhere else, if you're living in Australia, if you're living in the United States, or wherever you find yourself in the world, it's very easy to look over there and say, oh, I feel for the people over there and the problems they're facing over there. But what a lot of people don't realize is we all face them. It doesn't matter what religion you come from. We all face some kind of morality, some kind of repression. You mentioned it, the need to belong to a tribe. And it's been polled, by the way, the number one fear, believe it or not, is not death, is not public speaking. It's being ostracized, being ejected. And that comes from our primal roots, because back then, if you were cast out, it meant certain death. You couldn't survive in the wilderness on your own. It meant a very long, slow, painful, and lonely death. So, of course, it's ingrained in our DNA to want to fit in and to want to belong. But at what cost is the thing? In the United States, we have things like Christian nationalism. We have a group literally called the Moral Authority, that are telling everybody how to live and what to believe, purity culture. And please understand, I'm not here to knock religion in any way. Like you mentioned in my intro, I'm an ordained priest myself. So I'm in no way here to knock religion. I want to point out some of the inconsistencies, incongruencies that some of the people within those religions are trying to enforce or trying to preach, and how it creates unnecessary division as a result, not only from each other, by the way, or from others who don't share our beliefs, but from ourselves. And that is the real key. It creates division within ourselves. That's the ultimate divide and conquer.
Yeah, and that is really the intention of this chat I wanted to bring you on for again, my friend, is how do we, moving beyond that separation energy, because that separation energy knows no belief system, right? It knows no, area of the world, no time and space. It is, I don't want to say it's an evil, but it is the other side of the coin to the unity of love that we are, right? So we must be lovingly diligent to be open to looking at it for what it is and then deciding to do something else, right? Making a choice, right? And I don't want to make this overly simplistic, but at the end of the day, if we take away all the layers, there is one of two choices we can always make, right? We can either make one out of fear and separation, which is usually coming from the ego, or we can make one from unity and love, right? And those two choices we can make in any context, right? The one we're talking about today is that religious, the church, all the things, but this is beyond a religious conversation. But I want to go back to something you said, Andrei, that's important. And you mentioned that the biggest fear that we have is being sort of ostracized from the group. And we see this in a lot of the religious, elements going on at the moment in the world and the trauma that's happening. I think what we also must consider here and factor in, and this is probably why and we were just in a room talking about this, right? The inner child, right? The inner child, if I'm so let's take the Iran situation, right? And if I'm in that situation and all of these religious principles and belief systems are causing all of this separation energy, we must also consider that either the persecutors, the women, or both, there is some inner child elements going on there, right? Either some healed or unhealed, most likely, right? So I would factor that into what you're saying about being ostracized from the group. Like, where is that trigger originally stemming from? I think in most cases, someone that's, and I want to get your thoughts on this, someone that is pushing a belief system that expands this separation energy is most likely coming from a hurt space inside of them that most likely originates from that inner child lens. What are your thoughts on this?
Well, you are 1,000% right, I believe, my dear friend, because where does the need to control another come from, right? It's from things we cannot control within ourselves. And if it's an unhealed inner child wound and you find yourself lashing out, well, that is a reflex. That's not a conscious choice, right? And if you do it on a regular basis, you almost start to develop a resentment with yourself. And then by extension with others, going back to Iran, why the hijab, right? Why should women cover themselves? I read an article where they were interviewing one of the members of the morality police. And he says, well, we're told it's to protect the women because men will do awful things to them if their urges are stirred. So it's based in fear. They're spreading it by fear to women. Oh, you might be raped if you don't wear it. But also men's fear of, I can't control my urges. I've done a lot of thinking about this. Like, why do, not just Christianity, why do all religions, Islam, Judaism, even to a degree, right? Women have to wear a cap or a wig to enter a synagogue. So no religion is really like squeaky clean on this, but where does this urge to control people come from? And this is why the revolution in Iran right now that's happening, it's not just for Iran. It's really women standing up for all women and really for all beings. For all beings. Men don't realize how much they've been damaged by patriarchy or the imbalance between feminine and masculine energies. Colonialism, people don't realize that descendants of the colonized and descendants of the colonizers both have heavy karmas to heal. We're all affected. You know what I mean? We're all connected, thus we're all affected. And I was thinking, like, religion, why the war on the body? Right? Why the war on sexuality? Well, for one, sexuality and self-love and love of others tend to empower people. And George Orwell himself wrote, love is the most dangerous thing on earth because love leads to empowerment, and an empowered society is difficult to control, right? We're back to control.
And Andrei, I think that power leads us to our own divinity, right? What is that power source, right? That power source is the divinity that was never not inside of us. Right.
Well, that's just it. That's the message. Some of these practices like Tantra, where you get more involved with your body, There's nothing sacrilegious there at all. If anything, it leads you back to what religion was supposed to lead you to in the first place.
Yeah.
Before it got usurped by these institutions we call churches.
Yeah. I want to really underline that point that you very passionately but quickly overstated. You expressed and didn't pause on, is the patriarchy hurting men, and specifically the feminine inside of the man. Right, the patriarchy is impacting the physical female, as we all are obviously aware of, but it's not just impacting the physical female, it's impacting the divine feminine. And as a physical male, we have that. Going back to a lot of these, religious dogmas and ideologies, the one that you gave the example of the man that is going to just, lose control. Why are they losing control? Well, it's probably because they haven't had the education and haven't been allowed to explore their divine feminine. That when we have that balance, that flow, that sensitivity, those urges, they are there. But if we have that balance, then it's a healthy balance. It's not a over the top and we have to suddenly go out and take advantage of all the people around us. No, it's part of our divinity, right? It's the other side of that coin. So, what are your thoughts on this, my friend? I think it's this healthy divine feminine, I think, is a big part of, both sides of the coin, right?
Absolutely. Absolutely. There's not a woman that I've spoken to yet that hasn't told me they like being desired. They like being pursued. They don't like being stalked. There's absolutely a healthy and unhealthy version of it. So the goal is not to kill our desire. It's this fear and control thing. So when I was thinking where this came from, a lot of people say, well, it says in Genesis that sex is the original sin. No, it actually doesn't. What Genesis says is that Adam and Eve were in the garden naked together. And then everybody forgets the next line after that. And they knew no shame. Right? Their bodies were not the sin. Right? They knew no shame while they were naked in the garden together. That is the actual passage. So it's not the body. It's not the sexual desire. It's not even the sex that's the sin. Right? Eating from the tree of knowledge, the fruit of the tree of knowledge was the original sin. But knowledge of what? Knowledge of shame. Knowledge of self versus others. In other words, division. In other words, judgment. That is actually the original sin. And it makes sense when you look at the definition of the word sin, right? Sin comes to us from archery, and it means to miss the target, to miss the point, right? So you can indulge in someone's body in a conscious, intentional, spiritual, and healing act. Or even if it's just for pleasure. Pleasure is enormous. As long as it's by consent. You know what pleasure does? It raises your vibration. When your vibration is in a heightened state, healing takes place within the body. And more we're discovering how much healing takes place outside the body. As well, the radiant field that we create, right? The Maharishi effect. We're learning more and more about it. So it's not the Bible. It's not religion that originally tells us to repress sexuality. Where did this come from? I have a theory on it.
Well,
imagine...
Andrei, let me pause you there because I want to hear that theory. But let me just jump in here first before I lose this thought, because I just want to express it because it's bursting out of me. I think the element of this piece of moving through the body and moving through the higher frequencies of pleasure, what it also allows us to do, and I want to make this clear for people listening because we've talked a lot about this on other shows. We can't do shadow work. We can't heal our trauma. We can't heal our wounds, our internal wounds, right? Rejection wound, abandonment wound, our mother wound, our father wound. We can't heal that from a state of lower 3D frequency, right? We can't, if we're in the shadow, it's very hard to heal the shadow from the shadow. So what we need to learn to do is raise to the 5D, to the higher frequencies, and then from that higher frequency state, then hold the child, then hold the wound, then hold the shadow. So I just want to highlight that because that's so important what you said about cultivating pleasure, because when we raise the frequency with the pleasure, we can now look back at the parts of us that are still in separation energy and then bring them back into love. But it's very hard to do that. It's very hard to fight separation energy with separation energy, right? It's very hard to fight fire with fire. So cultivating pleasure here is really, you've said it, but I just want to hit it home. It's not just how we heal, but it's how we bring the darkness back into the light, right? So keep going with your theory, my friend. I'm sure it's leading into more of this.
Well, absolutely. And actually, darkness isn't really a thing. Darkness is the absence of a thing, if you think about it, right? So like a single match sparking up in a room is enough to fill an entire room of darkness with light. It doesn't take much. It's just, this is part of why we call it the shadow. It often doesn't get much light. It doesn't get much attention. And I love that you tied it to what you did, because this is exactly my theory. Like, if you imagine, one is, of course, control, like we talked about it. That's the negative part. But the other part of it, like, imagine a monk sitting in a monastery, trying to meditate, trying to reach that higher state. And then they have to fart. And then they have to go to the bathroom. And then they get hungry. And then a pretty woman walks by and they feel their sexual urges welling up. In other words, they're trying to reach a spiritual state, but their body is demanding attention. They want to control their body, but we all know you can't control your body. You can only hold off going to the bathroom or eating for so long. Eventually, the body will win, right? So the monks became frustrated trying to control their bodies and almost made the body an adversary to reaching spiritual attainment. Instead of the doorway through which you go, they made it the adversary. And they tried and tried and tried. This is where fasting comes from. This is where celibacy comes from. They tried and tried and tried to control their bodies and realized they couldn't. So they turned their frustration onto other people's bodies, thinking, well, they can control that.
Yes, I think that's exactly
and out
what
of
it
that,
is.
we got doctrine and we got all of these things.
Yeah. It's the projection of the shadow. It sounds like the projection of the shadow, right? I love that. And I think
it's literally what happens in a toxic relationship.
Yes.
It happened on a global scale.
Yeah. And I think the adverse of that, the flip side of that, is what we see in Tantra, what we see in Taoism, right, is instead of fighting the body, the bodily urges, we then use those bodily urges as another pathway back to the divine, right? What is the whole idea of, semen retention, or using the microcosmic orbit, or, using the breath within Tantra when we experience the flow of liquids and fluids, right? We're not pushing away the body there. We're embracing the body and what it helps us express our spirituality through, and using it to come back into spirituality. So it's just again.
Well, absolutely.
Tantra's
Absolutely.
the answer.
If you're a religious person and you're still on the fence after my Garden of Eden or sin argument, let me ask you, who made the body? Who made the penis? Who made the clitoris? If these things were made extra sensitive to draw our attention to them, right? I believe that God wanted us to experience pleasure, because that's when you're the closest to feeling the divine within yourself. Speaking of separation, I think this is the biggest crime of modern organized religions, is that they have created this entity called God, first of all, as a being, right? They created God in human form, but then they made it masculine. But then they made it separate from yourself. I think is the worst thing. No, divinity is to be found within you. And ironically enough, for all this talk of sex leading people away from spirituality, ironically, when we feel the closest and the most connected to the divine is during orgasm. First of all, during arousal. Arousal, by the way, means to awaken the senses. It wasn't even a sexual term of it originally. But when you are aroused, and particularly when you peak in orgasm, you are the most connected to the divine. The French call orgasm le petit mort, right? And it's not some dark, scary thing. What they're referring to is the death of ego, because it's when you go beyond the body. The divine masculine and feminine, not just an external partner, but the divine masculine and feminine energies that you spoke of within you are within complete union, but not only with each other. I like to joke that in the perfect tantric orgasm, it's always a threesome. It's your divine masculine, your divine feminine, but also the divine divine, right? It's always a three.
The oneness.
Yes.
Andrei, let me jump in here. So I would highly recommend, I love how you brought in the separation piece, right? So the separation energy isn't just everything we're seeing, again, sort of outside of us. It's also this idea that the divinity that's always been internal is a man on a cloud, right? And I would go back for new people to the podcast. I did a solo episode where I broke this down, why you are not separate, right? And many of the points that Andrei just highlighted, I brought up in the show. But Andrei, I have another question that I really want to get to here that's burning inside of me that I want to ask you. And it leads into more of this, it's more of the reasoning that I've seen why the church and many organized religions, and let me be very clear, as Andrei said before, we're not highlighting one religion here. This is present in most, if not all of them. And this piece, I read an interesting teaching by Joseph Campbell a couple of days ago, and Joseph Campbell teaches about 4 different ways we can interpret religious scripture, how we should interpret religious scripture, and it moves from the least productive to the most productive, or the least empowering to the most empowering. And I forget the middle two, but the first one, which was the least productive, was literal, taking it as literal fact. And then the most productive of religious scripture interpretation was inspirational, motivational, almost allegorical. So I'm wondering, 1, what are your views on this? And 2, how do you see this as a component that is exacerbating, the me versus them and the separation energy within the church and different religions?
Well, this is exactly it, because, on one hand, religion was supposed to bring us closer together to each other as a community, and then also to God, right? Love thy neighbor. God is all loving, right? But then on the other hand, accept if they believe differently than you, accept if they look differently from you, right? So we see so much division.
And Andrei, just because I remembered, that was, I think that was 2. I think that was the second least productive way of interpreting religious scripture. It was a team. So my interpretation, this team thinks this thing, and then my interpretation of the other team thinks this thing. Sorry, keep going. I thought that was funny.
Well, that's just it. Division across so many lines, whether it's political, racial, religion. Like, how many wars have been waged? How many people have died in the name of somebody else's God being the more peaceful one? Right? If you think about it, like even the Bhagavad Gita, I'm not just talking about the modern religions, but the Bhagavad Gita is all chronicles of war, right? I mean, but if you understand Hindu religion, like these deities are not meant to be external. They're aspects of our psyche that are warring with each other. But Buddhism too, I started my journey studying in a Buddhist temple in Japan. And it always amazed me that even there, the more enlightened religion, they still separated the women from the men. So it's this separation. Like Jesus taught love thy neighbor. He didn't teach judge thy neighbor. He didn't teach try to save thy neighbor from hell, right? Tell him the good news. The good news is you're going to hell. Like, it was never meant to be fire and brimstone and fear. Like, just the other day, I heard one preacher, I forget his name, but he was telling women that had sex before marriage that if they prayed hard enough with him, that they could regrow and heal their hymens. As if it's some kind of freshness seal, How stupid is that? I mean, the kinds of things that people are even allowed. They censor people like me that talk about sex education and Tantra. They should censor some people like this that are really dangerous for the public psyche. There's another preacher who's very popular. His name is Chad Veach. And I just heard a talk from him, and he was talking about how the heart is wicked. And you should never ever trust the heart because it's wicked. And it made me wonder, why are there so many depictions of Jesus and Mary where the heart is so prominent and glowing there, right? If it's wicked. So I looked up what the Bible has to say about the heart, and I found 2 passages. God is love, and whosoever abides in love abides in God, and God abides in them. God is love, and all who live in love live in God. That's John 4:16. And then I found King Solomon from Proverbs saying, above all else, guard your heart, for it is the wellspring of all life. That's Proverbs 4:23. So that's what I found about the heart. Nowhere in the Bible did I find a passage that says the heart is wicked, just like I didn't find a passage that says the body is a sin. It teaches us to know no shame, to know no division, to know pure love, because if you believe in the Christian version of God, every way he's described is as pure love. And that doesn't strike me as a God who would judge you or your neighbor and damn them to burn and suffer in hell for all eternity. That just makes no sense to me.
Andrei, thank you for sharing those quotes, right? Those quotes are beautiful. And I think what's coming up in me as you're expressing all of this is, and there are so many components that make this up, but we aren't taught, and this goes beyond religion, but we aren't taught how to ask ourselves what is true. Meaning we aren't educated on how to activate our spidey sense, right? So all the things that you just said about those different practitioners and those reverends saying those teachings, as soon as you said them, my internal, without even knowing the full story, my internal sense of, oh, this is something I need to step back from, or at least think about more deeply, activated, right? And I think this is a solution here. And I want to get your thoughts on this. This is a solution here to this division, to this separation energy, to these, whether it's the scripture, the misconceptions of the scripture, or the different teachers out there, the different ideologies, the belief systems. I think a really big, powerful solution here is learning to cultivate our own sense of inner awareness, right? The inner awareness, our intuition that reminds us, oh, this is not good for me, right? This is not good for me. And I'll just say another thing here and pass back to you. When we say this isn't good for me, that also doesn't mean it's not going to be good for me in the future, right? I think that's another piece of this, is that we think that we don't trust our intuition because we think it's set in stone, right? We think that, oh, I'm feeling this way, so this means that this is going to be the way I feel forever. But it's not like that, right? The intuition works in the present moment, and the present moment is always shifting. So I'm wondering, what are your thoughts on this, my friend? What are your thoughts on, cultivating our intuition within sort of this separation energy and this religious context we're talking about?
Well, I couldn't agree with you more, Harrison. Absolutely. If anything, religion teaches you to look outside of yourself for guidance. My partner, Kendall, she when she was in the process of leaving the church, one of the things that caused her to do it is she was involved with empowering a lot of women within the church. And the pastor actually pulled her aside and said, I'm not comfortable with you leading my flock. Wait a minute, flock? You just referred to your entire congregation as sheep, right? That's really how you view it. They're your flock to be led. So religion teaches us not to trust ourselves, right? To trust external powers, whether it's a deity or a priesthood or a doctrine or a government. If anything, it's disempowering. It takes the power away from you. So how do we cultivate that self-love, self-trust, and, like you said, intuition? Well, first and foremost, by listening to it. And even if it might disagree with something someone told you, that's okay. This is called critical thinking. It's okay to question. It's okay to think about a concept to see if it resonates with you or not, to see what your heart thinks of it. God wouldn't have given you a heart if you weren't meant to use it to feel in. God wouldn't have given you intuition, right? You're not going against your beliefs by exploring them. You're going deeper into them to find on an even deeper level. How do you cultivate intuition? You listen to it like any other muscle. The more you listen to it, the more you trust it, the stronger that voice gets. It's when you doubt it and question it that it becomes irregular and intermittent. Literally by listening, I make this practice. I've actually made it a practice, and it was awkward at first. It took some time. Okay. Now it's second nature. But the moment I get an intuitive hunch, I act on it immediately. And almost put myself in a it's too late to go back type situation. And then I think through it. Like I try to get in on that first impulse before the conscious mind, i.e. the ego, right? The ego goes to work picking it apart. That's what I try to avoid. And if we look at all of the modern institutions, they are born of egos, right? There were people that wrote it. There are people today teaching and preaching. It's all ego-based is the problem. It's moved us away from spirit instead of closer to.
Yeah.
There was never meant to be a middleman between you and the divine.
I love that breakdown, sir, and the intuition piece, making the choices, right? Making the choice with the intuition, acting on it straight away. What that also does is that it shows examples of what happens. Right. That's the thing we can always do, right? We can, if we're asking ourselves, if we're making a choice from fear and separation, ego, or from unity, love, and our spirit, our intuition, our soul, we can check based off the outcome of the choices that we've made, right? Did that outcome lead to more separation, more fear, more tension? Did that outcome lead to more unity, more love, more connection? That's how you know, right? And so I would just add to what you're saying, that's how we build that muscle too, right? We start to see and observe the outcomes of the choices we're making and take responsibility for them, right? No, not responsibility from like a judgmental perspective, responsibility in terms of a loving educational, right? Starting to see, this is what I'm doing, right?
Taking responsibility. That's what a lot of people are hesitant to do. Back to the Iranian example. The women should wear the hijab because the men are afraid of their own reaction. Like that, let's put the responsibility somewhere else. Or in the West, we often do it with birth control. Well, I don't want to wear a condom, so you should take birth control pills. You should put artificial hormones into your body for my convenience. You know, this idea with Iran, women needing to cover up. Well, here again, we have an example from the Bible, because there was a moment where Matthew and Jesus were walking and they came across some scantily clad women. And Jesus's views on this topic are very clear, actually. This is from Matthew 17:20. Truly, I tell you, no, sorry, that's the wrong one. It's Matthew 21:12. Where is it?
Too many loving inspirational quotes.
Too many quotes,
Too
but
many.
basically, I guess I'll paraphrase it. I can't find the exact quote, but it is in Matthew. He says, if it offend thee, take out thine eye from thee and cast it away. It's not the women. You can't make it someone else's problem. You know, microwaves nowadays come with a sticker that says not safe for live animals, because somebody tried to dry their cat in the microwave and won a lawsuit for traumatic. You know, they had an emotional trauma. What about the poor cat? So now stickers have to carry a warning label because people can't take responsibility for themselves. And this is right back to this topic. It's the power is within you. The intuition is within you. The connection to the divine is within you. And so is the responsibility. It's all within you, which is why I love Tantra so much. Because it's not a religion. It's almost an answer to religion, because it teaches you, it guides you to go back to yourself.
Yeah. Andrei, you reminded me, I want to jump to another question here, but you reminded me of something that you brought up before, you know, the connection to self. And if you're hearing us talk about going in and asking the question and building this intuition, but you're one of the people out there listening that's saying, oh, I feel numb though. I don't feel anything. I feel shut off. I feel turned off. And this is where I would encourage you. I think an extra piece that we haven't talked about here too much is this is why you need to do the healing work, right? Many of us, and I speak a lot about this in regards to the inner child, ancestral healing, doing trauma work, right? Many of us have gone into a hyperactive state where we're hypersensitive. And then because we haven't listened to those sensitivities, we've now gone into a hypo state. We're switched off, right? So I just want to encourage people listening, if you're listening to this piece around intuition and leaning into our inner voice, right? If that voice is quiet or numb, don't take that as a sign that you are broken, you are wrong, you are different. It's a sign of the world that you live in and the very traumatizing series of events that most of us are propelled into when we're born, right? From pregnancy, from collective events, from the education system. There's so many things that leave a little being just looking outside all the time for that fight or flight state. So I really want to sprinkle that in there for people listening. This is where trauma-informed work comes in too, right? Andrei, I want to ask you a question here. And we've spoken a lot about, you know, the church and religion, all these religious aspects. And we've spoken about the negative side of things, and we've given a couple of solutions, but I want to get your perspective on what does an ideal religious environment look like? What does an ideal religious, whether it's we go to a church, whether we go to a synagogue, whether we go to any kind of place where we can go connect to our beautiful religious beliefs, in a perfect world, what is your perspective on, what does that look like? If we take away all this separation energy, what does that environment look like from a very sort of practical lens?
Well, in effect, you're asking me what the perfect religion of the future might look like.
Yeah.
And ironically, for an example, I'm going to take us into the past. I think we need to look at shamanism. I think we need to look at some of the ways in which tribal indigenous people live, because it's very much about community. One of the things that struck me when I was visiting a Native American reservation was the entire community gathers for dinner. They gather in the school gymnasium. It's like a potluck every single night. It's important for them to eat as a community. Parenting, their concept of a nuclear family, which, by the way, was invented by the Roman Empire. It was a way of keeping track of people and taxing them before social security numbers. They did it via following a family tree. So, of course, you were encouraged to nest with someone. And of course, you were discouraged from divorcing someone because it made keeping track of things that much harder. And heaven forbid random babies where you don't know who the land and the inheritance should be passed to. I observed in tribal cultures, sometimes they didn't know who the father was. They didn't really seem to care. Everybody in the village had a hand in raising the children. It was the beautiful thing. And you know what I saw a lot less of? Gang violence, despite many of these places being very, very impoverished, right? I saw less gang violence. I saw less drug use. I saw less young kids being plopped in front of the television as a substitute babysitter, because there was always a group of adults ready and willing to pitch in and raising them. I saw less old people feeling useless and ostracized, because they were the wisdom keepers and the storytellers who had a hand in bringing up the next generation. They had a purpose too. So I saw much healthier young people. I saw much healthier old people. And overall, what I saw was love, cooperation, and community, Harrison. And I think that's what spirituality, at the core of its spirituality, even the modern ones, they teach us all is one and all is connected. They all use different language, different examples, and different allegories, but really they're all saying the same thing. All is one. The power is within you. Even Christianity actually says this. I've got some quotes ready for later, but even Christianity alludes to this, that the power is within you and not with an external God, believe it or not. Those scriptures don't get talked about very much is the thing, but it does say this. And if we look at it, some of these early beliefs like shamanism and tribal beliefs, what do they talk about? They talk about the web of life, how everything is connected. Even if they hunt and kill an animal for food, they pray both before the hunt and after the kill. It's a very sacred act, and the animal is loved and cherished. They wouldn't dream of a concept such as factory farms like we have today. They wouldn't, everything is about connection. You're a spiritual person when you look down at an ant and you see God and you gaze in wonder. You look at a tree rustling in the wind or even withering on the ground and you see beauty, you see love, and you see God. When you have that level of connection with everything around you, I think that's the goal of spirituality. Exactly the opposite of the division we're seeing today.
Yeah. I mean, it makes sense from a very simplistic view. What is the opposite of separation energy? It's unity. But what's funny, what bubbles up as you're explaining this, and it's just to me, it's so obvious. So I hope it's obvious to people listening and tuning in. Whenever I've connected into the higher realms, right? I don't say higher as in better. I just say that the different dimensions, right? When I've connected with guides, ancestors, angels, the thing that's been common in all of those sort of loving entity interactions is that they're always in groups, right? One person might step forward to give guidance, to give love, to give a certain channel, but all of the higher dimensional beings that have transcended the 3D form, they show up in group consciousness, right? They show up as a group of 12 ascended masters, or a group of 12 archangels, or a group of, and this is by design, and this is what you are describing, what we can learn to tap into. We don't have to wait till we're in angelic form or we're in the ascended master form. We can start to actively and intentionally decide to do that now, right? And the example that you gave of the tribe, of the people not worrying about who the father was, right? To me, what that also highlights is unconditional love, right? It highlights this other principle that I think is a part of this group consciousness, is that I don't see you for the father. I don't see you for the mother. I see you for the divine soul that you are, that is here to give value, give guidance, give what you're doing to the tribe. And that's just an extra label. That's just an extra characteristic that, yes, has value. But when it comes to what you're contributing to the tribe, we just need you. We just need the soul, right? So I think, I'm visioning, seeing it, my friend. I see this as the future we're going into. You brought this up right at the end there with the ants. And let me ask you a question about this. And, I look out into the world at the moment, and this expands beyond religion and the church, but I think this is a solution to bringing in more unity into the church. I look out into the world and I see Mother Earth and the pain that she's going through, right? Not the pain that she's causing, but the pain that we're making through our free will to, add on top. So I'm wondering if you could speak more to this, my friend, more to the role of Mother Gaia, Mother Earth, in helping us transcend this separation energy.
Well, yeah, just as much as we've committed crimes against each other, we have raped this planet and continue to do so. This very ship that sustains us and floats us through space, we are literally raping her. Something else I saw on the Indian reservations was a lot more reverence, not only towards animals, but towards the earth, communication and communion with, because again, it's not separate from. Okay. How are some natives able to do a magical rain dance and make it rain? Because the rain cloud is not separate from them, and neither is the parched earth. To you, it seems miraculous or magical because you view all of these as separate things. You see, to them, it's commonplace because they're like, well, there's no separation. If I can wiggle my finger, why can't I move a rain cloud? There is no separation in their mind. I'll tell you what I also saw there that directly relates to honoring Mother Earth. I saw them peeing a lot in nature, not running to the bathroom, but just finding the closest bush or tree, the ladies too. I saw them peeing a lot in nature. I observed the women burying their menstrual blood back into the earth. In fact, something that's really profound that was once said to me, this comes from Majida. She said, if more women honored the tradition of burying their menstrual blood, we wouldn't need so much sacrifice or war to spill it.
That's so funny.
In other words,
Andrei, I have to interrupt here. Sorry. It's so funny that you're bringing in the menstrual element, because at the time of this recording, you know my beautiful sister Taylor, right? I'm releasing an episode. I would encourage people to listen to it today, talking about using menstrual blood as not just seeing it as a divine piece of our being, but actually using it as creation energy, right? My sister uses her menstrual blood to create artistic expressions and artworks, right? So it's, not just a divine expression, it's also another way that we can heal through creation energy. Sorry, I interrupted you.
No, absolutely. This is a biggie. We've made it a source of shame in our society, right?
Yes.
Even television commercials that show feminine hygiene products will use blue water to demonstrate how absorbent it is. Why blue water? People say, well, they're afraid of showing blood. Well, no, not really, because as soon as the commercial ends and the movie comes on, you're going to see plenty of blood, right? It's not the blood they're ashamed of. It's this connection to our bodies. It's too animalistic for people, right? We like to think we've evolved past that. But women that I've observed who make a ritual out of it, who paint on themselves, who create artwork out of it, who honor their cycle and bury it into the ground versus thinking it's some gross, icky inconvenience. And by the way, this isn't just for the women, men. If there's a feminine in your life, you can be a part of their menstrual cycle. Learn about the different seasons, right? Support them through it. Learn from them instead of, oh, this is inconvenient. Go to your room and just talk to me when you're ready to re-engage. You can very much honor your feminine by becoming a part of this. So I've observed these tribes burying their blood and peeing in nature. And I just kind of commented, like, you guys, you're pretty free going with that. And he looked at me all serious. He's like, well, how else would the mother know what to grow for us? Ancient cultures didn't sacrifice. More modern religions sacrificed animals to appease their gods. But early on, they had an awareness that nutrients had to be returned to the soil if you were pulling nutrients out of the soil. That's where the concept of sacrificing animals first originated. But this idea, well, how would she know what to grow for us? You might think that's outlandish. Oh, what a silly, primitive, superstitious belief. But if you think about it, Harrison, if you go for a checkup to a doctor, the first thing they will ask you for is a blood sample and a urine sample. So it actually makes sense, and it gives light to what this relationship is between us and Mama Gaia. We don't take from her, we co-create with her. We put our nutrients, our blood, our urine into the ground, our carbon dioxide into the air, and Mother Nature uses that to produce things that are beneficial to us. So how can we for a moment believe we are separate from?
Yeah. So I love this, my friend, and I love how we're transcending into this topic here, because I see this going back to the church, going back to religions, right? I see this as a big solution, right? I see this as a big, green, red sign, whatever you want to call it, is a pathway back to how we bring connection and transcend separation energy within the church, within religion, everywhere, right? There's a reason that you talked about the witch trials. You mentioned it briefly before, but if you go even further back, right, there's a reason that that I think it was the Roman Church or the one of the old Christian churches, when they first started moving through Europe, one of the things they did was they burned all the ancient elder trees around Europe, right? Because they saw the power of those trees and helping people connect to divinity, connect to God, connect to love and connection, and all the things we're talking about here today. So this oneness and as above, so below with the Mother Earth is so powerful. And I want to get your thoughts on this here now, my friend. And this continues this Earth relationship that we have. I think what we, as spiritual practitioners, and a lot of my audience have heard the term soul contract, right? And we understand that we have soul contracts with people, right? I very obviously have a soul contract with you, my friend, based off how my heart feels whenever I talk to you, right? But we don't extend that. We don't extend that, or don't allow ourselves to extend this soul contract dynamic with the earth, right? The earth, the Mother Earth, is a soul, right? She is a soul, just like we as individuals are souls. And we have a contract with her right now on this planet during her ascension period at this time in space and place reality right now. So I'm wondering if you could speak to this. What's your perspectives on the fact that we have a soul contract with the earth, my friend?
Wow. Such a beautiful line of thinking and such a beautiful thing to ponder. We absolutely do. We could have been born on another planet. There's trillions of planets out there, and a good percentage of them are Earth, like we now know. There's a reason you came here at this time, to this place. This is one of the things, by the way, like, people sometimes ask me, how come you're always happy? How come you're always confident? My personal mantra is, I am at the right place at the right time for the highest good. Whatever might be happening, it's not an accident. You are here for a reason. So absolutely. Now, of course, people like yourself, Harrison, people who tend to be drawn towards podcasts like this, we're more aware of this. And we know that we were born at this time to kind of help rebalance things, help rebalance the masculine and the feminine, help rebalance humanity's role within the entire ecosystem. We have a greater awareness of this. So the idea of a soul contract might be more obvious, more prevalent, but realize that the people who dig the oil wells, right? The people who deny climate change, the people that you might think as the others, realize that they are also fulfilling their soul contract. Sometimes you have to, like in Iran, Sometimes you have to see the extreme of the imbalance in order to feel the urgency to rebalance and to see the path towards rebalancing. You have to swing one way in order to know which direction to go to reach the center. So they are also very much serving their purpose, which in a way informs our purpose. Everything, and here again, back to the ant, like nothing is wasted. God doesn't make mistakes. God doesn't create things that don't serve a purpose, and that includes you, right? So realize that everything and everybody, even the people who irk and annoy you, have a soul contract and are very much serving their purpose in your experience.
Yes. What comes up there, Andrei, as you're sharing that is, one, either God is everything or God is nothing, right? I tend to go towards the former, right? God is everything.
Well, both alpha and omega. That's the idea. It's both.
Yeah. And the people that are fulfilling their role, what that brings up is this beautiful play that we're in, right? We're all here as souls having this soul school, right? Or on another analogy is we're on the stage of this play that we're acting out. And those beautiful, if you want to call them asleep, if you want to call them still awakening, whatever your name is for them, they're playing their role beautifully, right? I would expand that to what we're seeing in the world with the World Economic Forum, with, the Bill Gateses, and, without getting off into all things, controversial here. All of those people, at the very least, you can say they're playing their roles perfectly, right? Because they are holding up the negative.
I really love what you said, awakening. You said it really well. Awakening, like all things in the mental health spectrum, there is a spectrum.
Yeah. And so I was it's beautiful. And I think there's this divine order that's happening, even if we don't consciously see it, if we're all not consciously aware of it. Andrei, I want to be mindful of time here, but I do want to ask you one more final question here to sort of wrap this beautiful chat up in a nice little bubble. And, we've talked about the church, we've talked about religion, and we've talked about all these ways to transcend separation energy and come back to heart, come back to love, come back to unity. And I'm wondering, what is a message here that you want to share for everyone? What is a message maybe that encompasses some of the things we've talked about, but a message that people can leave with, right? A very practical message that they can leave with their hearts to start implementing today, whether they are in a religious context or a church context, or they just find themselves weighed down by all of the separation energy that's being thrown around in the world at the moment. What is one sort of practical piece of advice you can leave everyone with?
Well, in a nutshell, you are more powerful than you realize. Here again, you don't need the middlemen to lead you to the divine. The divine is not outside of you. And it's not like you have to wake up and become divine. You already are divine, is the thing. The only thing that's missing is the realization of it. Nothing has to happen. Nothing has to change. You already are. And for the people that are within religion wondering, well, I don't know, this kind of sounds like sacrilege. Here again, I'll go back to the scripture. Well, let's go back and see what religion says about this. And my favorite passage along these lines is John 14:12. Truly, truly, I say to you, whoever believes and also does the works that I do, then even greater works than I shall you perform. Jesus himself is saying, don't bow down and worship me, be like me. And as a matter of fact, you can be even greater than me. So you don't have to choose between your spiritual path and religion. The two are not at odds. There are some people who are placing themselves between you and your spiritual path. Okay? You are not at odds with the original teachings of the scripture whatsoever. In fact, in Jesus' own words, be even greater than me. Except I like to change that with you already are. You just need the realization.
So beautiful, my friend. I'm really getting the urge now to go read some scriptures, right? And read some scriptures from, I might have to get you to send me all those paragraphs, my friend, because I want people to lean into what I said before around the Joseph Campbell teachings of, if you have a lot of trauma around religious education, just start with the inspirational lens, right? As I was listening to Andrei express those quotes, you feel something there. And I think a lot of us just, I'll say this one more time to wrap this up, right? Is I think there are beautiful, and I know Andrei agrees with this, and he's been highlighting it today beautifully. There are powerful, beautiful, loving, spiritual, mystical foundations of every single religion, but we get lost. We get lost in all of the man-made separation energy and dogma and beliefs that get layered on top. So if we can find a way,
remember that Jesus was not a Christian. Krishna was not a Hindu. Buddha was not a Buddhist, right? Before Christianity, you had Gnosticism. Before Judaism, you had the Kabbalah. Before Islam, you had Sufism. I would say go to the root, go to the source of everything. And there you find the real teachings.
And Rumi comes to mind, right? Rumi as the beautiful Sufi mystic, as the spiritual foundation of the Islam tradition, right? Andrei, I love you very much, my friend. Thank you for spending time with me today. Thank you for sharing your grace, your love with the world, with me. I want to give you a bit of space here now. I know that we've, on the other show, if people go back and listen to the first interview we did together, a lot of your details I'll put again in the show notes about Tantra Awakening. Anything else going on in your world, my friend, that you want to share, that if people have been pulled to your beautiful work, that you would love to, explain to them what's happening in your world at the moment, my friend?
Well, thank you for that, Harrison. TantricAwakening.net is the go-to place. It's got links to all of my social media platforms. My latest projects are always put up there. Tantric Awakening. Well, Tantra, we understand. It's the path back to self, and it teaches you connections, right? Connection back with your own body, connection back with each other, and with the world around us. So, but then there's also the awakening part, and that's that realization, the becoming that I spoke of. So that's why we named it what it is, and everything I'm up to, you can always find at tantricawakening.net. And what do I do personally? I work with people to get past trauma, past shame, past any blocks or limiting beliefs that are holding themselves back, to do exactly that. To not only realize their power, I mean, power is great. Okay, so now I feel better. But to, more importantly, to make a much more and bigger and more meaningful impact in the world. For everybody, we all win, right? The more lights that come online, we all benefit from that. So that's a little bit about what I do personally. And like we opened the show with, when you're in your being, when you are being your divine purpose, that's when you're experiencing life on the highest level. So nothing makes me happier than to see someone else realize what they're fully capable of.
I'm right there with you, my friend. I love you very much. Thank you for spending time with me today. And I would really encourage anyone listening, please acknowledge the pull, lean into the pull if you're feeling connected to this beautiful man, because he is doing so much wonderful work in the world, and you heard it all today. So with that, thank you for listening. Thank you for tuning in, beautiful podcast listeners. Both Andrei and myself love you very much. We wish you a wonderful evening, morning, and night, wherever you are in the world. We send you light. We send you love. We send you a lot of tantric awakening energy. And until next time here on the podcast, we'll see you very soon. Bye, everyone. Before I leave you today, beautiful beings, I'm so excited to share a special announcement just with you. On the 20th to the 23rd of April, 2023, I and a fellow guest of the show, the beautiful Ali Paws, will be hosting live in Tulum, Mexico, the Cosmic Heart Tour. If you listen to this podcast week to week and you resonate with my frequency, with my voice, with my love in any of the topics I share with you, then most likely it is time for us to connect and heal in person. So I invite you to join us in Mexico. Join us for some meditations, activations, yoga, cranial sacral therapy, a book release, a live Q&A, poetry, and so much more. These spots are going to fill up super quick because our intention is to make this exclusive and intimate. So please DM me Cosmic Heart Tour on any of my social channels. That's Cosmic Heart Tour on any of my social channels, Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, LinkedIn, and we'll book in a meeting so you can join the love. I'm so excited to connect with you in the flesh. Thank you for listening to the Cosmic Love Antenna with me, your host, Harrison. If you gained value or this episode hit your heart, please remember to share this out with a friend, a family member, or a lover. You can also leave your love over on Apple reviews and Spotify star feedback, and this helps me spread my frequency to more souls in need. Finally, if you want to connect with me deeper, want to reach out, interested in coaching, please follow me on Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, and LinkedIn at Harrison Meagher, Meagher spelled Meagher. Sending you so much love.
Electricast.